In the shattered reality of a broken Skyrim, Vec Frostwain, a master of fate manipulation, finds himself caught in a strange game of trust and power. After an unexpected encounter where Canary and Vyri are knocked out, Vec ponders Sanguine's motives, perhaps testing his loyalty or his willingness to make tough decisions. As the dreamscape shifts, Vec feels the pull of a deeper force, with Vermina appearing armored and mysterious, surrounded by a serpentine symbol. Her presence, a fusion of awe and danger, reveals Vec's unique power granted by the Fate Weaver and ability to augment his reality in ways few can understand. Her cryptic words stir a mix of curiosity and dread, hinting at a deeper fate woven around Vec's existence, one that may alter everything he knows about his fractured world. The skill trees were laid out before her eyes, but the mention of the Fate Weaver sparked something elusive in my mind, something familiar yet frustratingly out of reach. My memory blanked. The snake's eyes widened as she noticed my confusion. "You know of the Fate Weaver, but can't place it. How curious," she remarked with a smirk. I paused, trying to focus, and then she added, "Ah, so you dream with open eyes. I can read your thoughts, even in your dreams. It's interesting how lucid your mind is, how transparent your thoughts become." Her words didn't help me, but she seemed to enjoy the discomfort. "I know it's not fair. I'm a god," she said, almost teasing. "You only hope to become one. Meridia finds it cute, though. She rarely makes deals with mortals, and none have succeeded like you. So, the Sable Wave counted as a victory in their twisted game. Good to know. Why are you here, though?" I asked. She shrugged like a human, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. "I'm one of the few princes beyond spying. My domain is filled with secrets that even Mafala can't touch. And by the way, she's furious with you." I nodded. "So, you're here because our goals align?" I raised an eyebrow. "Exactly," she said, tilting her head. "Meridia, Dagon and I are interested in you. Sheogorath too, though it's hard to say what that one truly wants." "And Harrison?" I asked, half expecting a different response. She gave a nod, but her tone was playful. "Harrison values sportsmanship, fairness, things you don't align with, but he holds a certain respect. In a realm where reality itself is being rewritten, Vec Frostwain, a master of manipulating existence, steps into a world of fractured timelines. With his powerful frozen quill, he bends fate, merging relics, forging new weapons, and uncovering dark conspiracies. Alongside his companions, a rogue werewolf, a former interrogator, and a fierce warhorse, Vec navigates shifting allegiances and unravels the mysteries of a broken world. As he confronts ancient forces and forgotten powers, he discovers that his actions may be the final key to defining the fate of all. Yet, with gods like Vermina, Dagon, and others showing an interest in him, Vec's journey is far from simple, as corruption, decay, and the pursuit of power intertwine in the shadows. Her anger boiled over, twisting her words into sharp barbs. I stepped back, trying to avoid her gaze. "Meridia controls light and life," she snapped. "She probably wants to sink her claws into a prime disciple, just like you. Maybe she thinks you can shed some light on her domain, just like you try to twist mine." The question hung in the air, unanswered, but Vermina, ever the paradox, backed off with a quick apology. "Every Daedra has their allies, but Meridia? None. Her only real ally was Jiggalagwell. We all know what happened there. Her arrogance tends to rub people the wrong way." She leaned closer, her smile flickering like a shadow. "Be warned, your ties to Sheogorath and Meridia might attract Jiggalog's attention. Seems like you're getting too cozy with Daedric politics." I didn't have control over that, especially when Vermina herself invaded my dreamscape. But before I could respond, she read my mind. "No, you're not in a coma, but you will be out for longer than you'd like. Maybe 12 hours, who knows?" "Great." I tried to shut my thoughts down, but she effortlessly interrupted. "That wraps up the princes who might help you without strings. As for the others, well, expect to pay for their favors. Except maybe Malakathi's fair, but we don't talk often." She smiled, stroking her two-headed snake, her voice dripping with sweetness. "But don't think we're done. We still need to talk about the Skull of Corruption and what I want you to do for me." I arched an eyebrow. "I thought you said no strings?" "Ah, but I have to be fair," she mused, her tone teasing. "Let's start with the skull. It'll be replaced once you wake up, but I notice you've stored it in another artifact. I'll teach you the spells to control it. No worries." And just like that, my fate took another turn. The moment the Skull of Corruption is replaced, the air shifts. "That's fair," I said, shrugging. "I couldn't really use those spells anyway. The basic ones might come in handy. But what are you replacing it with?" someone asked. "That was the only artifact I knew you by." Vermina laughed, her eyes glimmering. "Your knowledge has gaps, but no matter," she mused. Then, as if from nowhere, a snake slithered around her, transforming into a staff. The shape reminded me of the caduceus, but there was something different about it. Vermina flicked her wrist, and in an instant she was in front of me, towering twice her size. "What an interesting thought you have," she said with a mysterious smile. "I'd love to know what's inside your head." A flash, and she returned to her usual form. She pointed the staff at me. "This is the Staff of Panoply." And no, I didn't choose the name. "Right," I nodded. "The Weaver of Panoply." She tilted her head. "The more you talk, the more I want to dig deeper into your mind. Panoply means an impressive collection, after all." I thought for a moment before responding. Memories? Maybe? After all, dreams and nightmares are collections of past events you either want to relive or avoid. Vermina's laugh echoed in the air. "Brilliant. You're not quite on the nose, but who needs precision when carving hearts?" She tossed the staff into my hands. "This, in your hands, will be deadly." The moment I grasped the power of the staff, a chill ran down my spine. It could cast any spell from memory at no cost. I glanced at Vermina, who seemed satisfied, knowing I now understood the staff's true purpose. She leaned in, raising a finger as she spoke with a gleam in her eye. "Now, about your plan to build an information guild?" She lingered on the words, a slow grin spreading across her face. I nodded slightly, and Vermina burst into laughter. "So you already see where this is headed? You're my favorite mortal for a reason. Many of your guilds are intertwined with Daedric influences. Those companions hiding in this very city, they're tied to her scene. And that old, grimy thieves guild, they're Nocturnal's little secret." She paused, looking at me expectantly. "Tell me, what's your answer?" I sighed, knowing exactly what she meant. "You want me to establish a hidden sect within my guild?" I said. Her laughter grew louder, ringing with madness. "Yes! Do you know why, my sweet pet?" I paused, searching for the answer, but it evaded me. Her voice dropped, sweet but laced with menace. "You reforged Mephala prized ebony blade under Meridia's banner. You don't realize it yet, but your choice is realm-altering. Your ideals, your very beliefs, they hold power. An alliance is formed to tear Mephala apart. This, my pet, is only the beginning." As the staff's secret unfolded, I shivered. This artifact could cast any spell from memory. No cost, no limits. I glanced up at Vermina, her smile smug, knowing I had figured it out. She leaned in closer, her finger raised. "Now, you want to build an information guild?" Her voice lingered in the air like a challenge. I nodded slightly, and her laughter echoed, rich with amusement. "You already know what comes next, don't you? You are my favorite mortal for a reason. You see, many of your guilds are secretly tied to Daedric influences. Those companions hiding in the city, they're connected to her scene. That grimy thieves guild, Nocturnal's work. Now, tell me though, you know what I want?" I sighed. "You want me to create a hidden sect within my guild plans." Her laughter erupted, crazed and triumphant. "Yes, exactly. Do you know why?" I paused, struggling to grasp the full weight of her words. Her voice dripped with madness as she revealed the truth. "You forged Mephala's prized blade under Meridia's banner. Your choices will shift the realms themselves. You've sparked an alliance to tear Mephala apart." I stared at my spell list, letting out a long sigh. Night Terrors and Dream Siphon had vanished, replaced by 2 novice-level spells, just as Vermina predicted. Oddly, they were still categorized under destruction spells. The first, called Sleepless Night, didn't cause harm, but plagued the target with bad dreams. Nothing too dangerous, but it felt off. Could it be that Vermina wanted me to experiment with my spellcrafting abilities? Then there was Maiden's Embrace, a spell that sounded far more powerful, but in reality, simply ensured that someone remained well rested. It even worked on creatures like werewolves and vampires. I couldn't help but wonder how Dream Siphon had been twisted into something so harmless. With the power to alter spells, I experimented with the 2 new additions, tweaking them with my personal alterations, which resulted in 2 buffs and 3 new spells. It became clear Vermina knew exactly what I could do. I checked the 2 passive effects I gained. Magic Dreams boosted my mana by 10% while I slept, confirming I had a separate mana pool when dreaming. The second, Maiden's Kiss, replaced well rested, ensuring I was always at my peak, though I could no longer gain the temporary benefits of regular rest. While neither effect was a game changer, they were useful in the long run. I couldn't help but chuckle at my own thoughts as I looked at the 2 diverging spells seemingly useless. But part of the puzzle I was piecing together in this fractured world. The first illusion was Nightmare's Gatia flash of terror drawn from the mind's darkest abyss, gone in a blink, barely worth the mana it devoured. Its mirror, Dream's Gate, summoned a fleeting glimpse of deepest longing, equally impractical and costly, both shackled by Daedric design that refused mortal refinement. Then came Delusion, a cruel hybrid of illusion and alteration, weaving visions to fracture sanity itself, as though Daedric hands had scripted madness into its very code. Yet curiosity demanded more. By fusing temporal judgment with fast healing, I birthed dilated restoration, a quiet miracle of restoration, mending rust, age, and ruin with every pulse of arcane force. A spell to unwrite decay itself. And so, within this collapsing tapestry of illusions and rewritten relics, the dance of creation and corruption spirals one each incantation, a line of code, each line a question of what should remain real. The effects of reinforcement were straightforward, yet the description of Fortify hinted at something more. I had a feeling that its wording might lead to an interesting outcome, much like how Necromantic Ritual allowed me to spam low-cost conjuration spells. Fortify had the potential for a similarly intriguing interaction. Trapped in the dreamscape, I found myself unable to fuse or split spells despite having some mana left that was just insufficient to do anything meaningful. With a sigh, I approached the double doors within the dreamscape, passing through them and emerging into the bright light. Suddenly, I woke up, feeling refreshed, but it was already noon. It seemed I'd be spending another day in Whiterun, which worked out since I needed to prepare for a long journey ahead. My route would take me through various detours in the Rift, and I had a hunch someone had recently joined the Thieves Guild. However, their chances of conquering dungeons in the Rift were slim. Joining the Thieves Guild was a time-consuming endeavor, despite the generous rewards. I stretched and pulled out my notebook, ready to jot down notes for my personal profile. I wasn't about to trust the system blindly. It felt safer to be prepared. After having a late breakfast at the Bannered Mare, I took advantage of the quiet time when most people were out running errands. Hulda informed me that Canary and Vyri had both left earlier that morning. Vyri was meeting with the companions again, while Canary was off visiting the city's nobles. Reinforcement was simple in its effect, but Fortify? That spell had potential. The way it was described left me intrigued. It felt like it might lead to something mind-bending. Sort of like how Necromantic Ritual let me spam low-cost conjurations, I had a feeling Fortify would open up some crazy new interactions. Still, I wasn't in any rush to test it. The dreamscape still held me captive, mana drained, and stuck. I tried fusing spells, diverting them, but I lacked enough mana to actually do anything substantial. With a shrug, I headed for the double doors that loomed ahead. They opened into a bright light, and stepping through them, I jolted awake. Noon already? I felt well rested, but the day was already slipping away. Looks like I'd be stuck in Whiterun for a bit longer, though I wasn't complaining. It gave me time to prep for the long journey ahead, filled with detours and diversion. Somewhere out there, someone had joined the Thieves Guild, but conquering dungeons? Unlikely. The guild was a time sink. But hey, the rewards were tempting. Stretching out, I grabbed my notebook, ready to jot down my personal profile, because who knows when the system might fail me. Being cautious seemed wise. After a late breakfast at the bar, the place quiet as noon took over, I rode away. People ran errands or took care of their business life, and the inn was on pause. I asked Hulda about Canary and Vyri. Canary had gone to see the nobles, while Vyri was off to speak with the companions. A calm before the storm. In a broken Skyrim where the rules of reality itself are unraveling, I find myself considering my next moves. The mysterious bugs in jars, possibly collectibles, hold a strange allure, but there's more pressing matters ahead. The ruins of Thoth remain out of reach until I can crack the puzzle mechanism, something I doubt my wits will solve. Nearby, Autumn Watch beckons, with whispers of a dragon lurking. Could I defeat such a beast? I know better than to expect victory, but its scales, blood, and bones? They could be valuable trophies. My mind shifts to Froki's Shakis quest, is long and spread across the harsh terrain of Skyrim. Yet the reward, Kind's Token, which reduces damage from all creatures, is too good to pass up. But maybe I can avoid the quest itself and simply retrieve Froki's bow from near Whiterun, bribe him with it to spare me the long trek. Soon after, more intriguing quests arise Angervunde, with its radiant treasure hunt and the Cursed Tribe, a Daedric challenge offering the coveted bloodkin status among orc tribes. The reward? Volendrung, a weapon I'd greatly desire. Avincenzo will have to wait. The lexicon needed for that task is yet out of reach. There's no shortage of quests ahead, including alliances and deadly encounters, all leading me to a future where reality itself may fall under my control. At Darklight Tower, there were no extra quests or time-consuming tasks to tackle, but it was a crucial spot, especially with Ilia, a mage who betrayed her coven. She possessed remarkable power, and getting through her quest granted me a firewall staff that could come in handy. Next was Crystal Drift Cave, a simple animal den, though it housed a peculiar staff, the Staff of Charming. While it was mostly useless, crafted by a mage apprentice who sought to tame animals, its uniqueness made it potentially valuable as a bribe. After all that, I arrived at Riften, ready for several important tasks. But before I could dive into the next chapter, I had to first head toward White River Watch for Froki's bow. I left the Bannered Mare, only to realize that my memory had a glitch. It wasn't White River Watch, but Grey Winter Watch that held the bow. Standing over the bandits I had just slain, I exchanged a glance with Vairi. So? This isn't the place, she said. Yeah, it's fine, I replied, with the Iron Hand gauntlets potentially in our future instead. As we entered the cave, we encountered a blind man who mistook us for someone named Rodolph, one of the bandits we'd just taken care of. I moved on to the next location, relieved to find there were no additional tasks or time-consuming quests. Darklight Tower was up ahead, and it held some significance, especially because of Ilya, a witch who had betrayed her coven and wielded immense power. The quest promised a unique staff, one I might actually use the firewall staff. Pretty useful, right? My journey then led me to Crystal Drift Cave, the final stop on my route. Nothing special, just an animal den. But there was this one odd dead guy and his staff. Gadner's Staff of Charming, made by some mage apprentice who thought he could tame animals with it. Honestly, it was a bit of a joke. Still, it was unique, so who knows? It could be good for bribing someone. Finally, I reached Riften, a city that required me to juggle multiple tasks. For now, I closed my notebook, realizing I had to head to White River Watch for Froki's bow. So, I left the Bannered Mare, heading out. Chapter 74, Imperfect Memory. When I arrived at White River Watch, it hit me memory was off. Froki's bow was at Greywinter Watch, not White River. White River was where the Iron Hand gauntlets were. I stood over the bandits I had just slain. Vairi looked at me. So? This isn't the place. I sighed. Yeah, it's fine. I had made Vairi her own armor, but maybe she'd want the gauntlet. We walked into the cave and were greeted by a blind man. Who's there? Rodolph? That you? Rodolph was one of the bandits we just killed, in a fractured Skyrim where the fabric of reality itself unravels. Vec Frostwain, a half-Nord, half-Snow Elf with the power to manipulate fate, continues to rewrite quests and timelines. Armed with a reality-bending frozen quill and accompanied by his companions Canary, Vairi, and a warhorse named Philip Vec dismantles dark conspiracies while forging new destinies. His latest creation, Sablewave, a blade of shadow and flame, cuts through his enemies with terrifying precision. On his journey, he saves Khajiit merchants, confronts corrupted nobles, and encounters new players like Stefan, all while whispers from forgotten powers grow louder, signaling the approach of an ultimate challenge. As Vec's power over reality deepens, the stakes rise, and he begins to question if he alone can define what's truly real in a world that's rapidly losing its coherence. Hajvar looked at Ulfr, slung over Vairi's shoulder, and asked, "That my uncle?" I shot back. "Yeah, you want to turn yourself in, dead or alive?" He sighed heavily. "I never planned on being a bandit, but they treat the blind worse than cattle. Even among the bandits, they treated my uncle horribly. That brainless Rodolph kept playing pranks on him." He sighed again. "We were from Riften, moved to Whiterun, but the travel was brutal on Uncle. Couldn't leave him behind, though. He cared for me when my parents passed." Vairi looked at me, and I shrugged. "Let him monologue. It's good karma." Hajvar nodded. "I hear that. My parents needed karma like that. They were thieves for the guild in Riften." I asked, "Were you rejected from Whiterun?" He laughed. "I looked like my dad, and he had quite a bounty on his head. They tried to grab us at the gates, but we escaped and found this cave. You know the rest." Vairi pointed at him. "So, are we fighting or not?" I looked at Hajvar. "Yeah, you gonna fight?" Hajvar met my gaze with a sad look. "No, honestly, I'm done. I was just gonna kill Rodolph and head west." Vairi turned to me. "Wait, didn't you want skilled fighters? Why not make a contract like you did with me?" I thought about it, didn't really need to trust him. Vairi's contract was fake, but I had prepared a few already written ones. After all, trusting everyone who joined was hard. Smart idea. "You want a treat?" We were all set to leave, but Hajvar paused. "Wait, let me put on my gauntlets." He grabbed a set of steel gloves. I figured those were the Iron Hand gauntlets. Should I take them? Nah, they only boosted two-handed weapon. As we moved through the makeshift dungeon, Ulfr started waking up, so I pulled out another contract and got him to sign it. With the contracts done, we just need to finish up the bounties. After that, head toward Riften to a place called Lost Prospect Mine. If you get there first, set up camp. I'll be bringing an Argonian, maybe a witch, to help out with the mine. Hajvar nodded. "Gotcha." Ulfr groaned. "My head still hurts." Vairi pushed them along. "Let's go, I'm starving." Now alone, I made my way to Greywinter Watch, just beneath the ritual stone. I saw a necromancer at the top. Shrugging, I summoned a flaming familiar. The wolf ran up, exploded, and wiped out the skeletons guarding the necromancer. The blast sent him flying off the hill. I found him struggling to crawl away, his robes burnt away, gasping for air. I drove my sword through his stomach. Where do these necromancers keep coming from? Heading down the hill, I reached Greywinter Watch and found two trolls inside. I didn't bother sneaking. They charged, and I sliced one's arm clean off. We were ready to leave, but Hajvar paused, reaching for his gauntlets. I assumed they were the Iron Hand ones, but I wasn't feeling greedy enough to equip them myself. They were meant for two-handed weapons, after all. As we traversed the makeshift dungeon, Ulfr began to stir, and I handed him another contract to sign. Now that that's done, we just need to handle the bounties. Once they're sorted, I want you to head toward Lost Prospect Mine near Riften. Set up camp if you arrive before us. I'll be recruiting an Argonian and possibly a witch to help with the mine, I said. Hajvar nodded, acknowledging the task, while Ulfr groaned, still nursing his headache. Vairi, always eager, pushed them forward with a growl. Let's move, I'm starving. Left alone, I made my way to the Grey Winter Watch under the ritual stone. A necromancer stood atop it, and without hesitation, I summoned a fiery familiar. The wolf charged up the hill, exploded, and the blast wiped out the necromancer's skeleton guard. The necromancer himself was thrown off the edge. As he crawled, eyes wide with panic, I finished him off with a swift strike through his stomach. What was it with these necromancers? I walked down and entered Grey Winter Watch, where two trolls awaited. No stealth required. I let them charge, and in an instant, I severed one of their arms. The second troll swung at me with a downward strike, but I cut through its arm, leaving it limp. The first hit was a critical strike, and the troll roared in fury. Its companion lunged at me, and I stabbed Sablewave into its skull, dropping it instantly. The other troll fled, and I chased it into the back of the cave, where it stood protectively over a small, ugly child. I raised my hand and cast a fire spell, weak as it was, but effective against trolls. The creature blocked it with its whole body while growling at me, but I sliced through it, ending its life. Turning to the troll child, I found it still asleep, perhaps a newborn. I considered my options, then grabbed a barrel, tossing the sleeping child inside after dumping out some spoiled apples. I made sure to leave a hole for breathing, then returned to the troll corpses. Using my harvesting skill, I stripped the fat and bones from the bodies. Now for the bow, I muttered, scanning the cave. Amongst the half-eaten bandits, I finally found Froki's bow buried beneath some plants. It was tossed aside during the clash between the bandits and trolls. The bow needed restringing, but its enchantment still shimmered. What now? I muttered to myself, pondering the day ahead before we left for Helgen. With a shrug, I grabbed an unread skill book and set off toward Whiterun. As we moved forward, Canary asked, "Where were you yesterday?" Didn't I mention? We recruited some bandits for a future mining project, and I found a bow. She frowned, and I glanced at the quiet Hajvar and Ulfr. Hajvar simply shrugged. "I'm just here for the job." Canary turned her glare on him, then back at me. "Why are they riding with us?" I explained. "We cleared their bounty and fixed the mistake that made them bandits in the first place. Now, they're contracted to help secure my mining operation near Riften." Canary just shook her head. "It doesn't surprise me you'd use a magic contract for employment." As we neared a charred fortress in the distance, Vair whistled. "Is that Helgen?" It was far grander than I expected, more than just a typical Skyrim fort. Yup, destroyed by a living myth. Alduin scorched everything. Ulfr chimed in just as someone asked, "Was Helgen really destroyed by a dragon?" The rumors had spread far and wide, but nothing truly compared to what we were witnessing now. Hajvar spoke up. "Even the Imperial walls have fallen. Not much remains of the fortress now." As we drove through Helgen, the weight of dozens of eyes on us was palpable. I shouted, "I know you're here, scavengers. Get lost before we put an end to this. Looting is forbidden by the Empire." Canary nodded in agreement. "Smart, I feel their gaze too." I shrugged. "The ones who'd scavenge here aren't the type to challenge us. The Stormcloaks have probably already taken what they wanted." Canary raised an eyebrow. "Ulfric's Stormcloak was supposed to be executed here. Did you know he wiped out an entire legion by himself?" "A miracle they even caught him." I glanced back. "How long are we staying?" She jumped off. "I'm checking the Legion's barracks." Stormcloaks might have missed something. I pointed to Vairi. "Follow her just in case we find some hidden scavengers." The two women nodded and set off. While they were gone, I worked on leveling up my alteration magic. After an hour, they returned clearly. They'd been in a fight. "A fight? Really?" I asked. Canary called back, "What did you say?" I corrected myself. "I meant, what happened?" Vairi sighed. "Scavengers." Canary opened a safe, and they jumped us. She held out a bag of loot. I rifled through it and began sorting the items. Canary frowned, flipping through scattered logs and fragments that felt more like corrupted, save files than history. Execution lists, entry logs, but nothing on the Thalmor. The ambassador came to Helgen before the flames, yet that entire day's data is missing. Hajvar, hopeful, offered, maybe the dragon attack wiped the logs before they could be added. But Vec shook his head, memory scripts flickering across his gaze. "No, the Empire keeps list entries are recorded first, chaos or not. A surprise visit unlogged means it was hidden from the start. Canary agreed, suspicion sharp as a drawn blade. Even without the dragon, something was bound to break. They rolled on toward Orphan Rock, bounty marked and fate quietly rewritten. As the Coven's sigils glowed in the dusk, Vairi asked why they'd come. Vek leapt down. Which bounty? Hajvar hesitated, Ulfr refused, and Canary sighed, resigned to violence. In a breath, arrows cut the distance, shadows split the closest hags, and the Hagraven answered fury with fire. I dashed forward as she narrowly avoided the blow. The Hagraven, with fury in its eyes, turned and prepared to unleash another fireball directly at me. But before it could, an arrow struck it square in the eye. The creature faltered, and I swiftly closed in, delivering a lethal strike across its neck in a single, fluid motion. As I looked around, my gaze landed on an altar adorned with a goat's head, several feathers, and a strange weapon Nettlebane. It didn't resemble an ebony dagger. Rather, it had the appearance of a pair of scissors, incomplete, missing the other half. I grabbed it, then stashed it away, unsure of its purpose. Canary, ever observant, remarked on my storage, asking how I fit so much in my deep storage. I explained it was a rare but well-known spell, managing it carefully. Vairi chimed in, joking that whatever I couldn't carry, I dumped on her like sleeping bags and provisions. I shrugged. I've got the carriage, after all. Climbing onto the carriage, I noted the awkward load of bags, with Canary and Vairi following suit. Ulfra, ever the skeptic, commented on the cramped conditions, though I countered, doesn't it make it comfier? A soft seat instead of hard wood? I kept the carriage moving, navigating the treacherous path. Though the journey on foot would have been faster, I finally slowed near an alchemist's shack. A good place to stop for the night. I pointed at the shack, and without saying a word, everyone looked at me like I had lost my mind. You see the skeleton outline in that garden, right? The owner's clearly gone, and I'm calling dibs on the bed, I said. Canary just shook her head. You can take the bed, but I'm not sleeping in some moldy old shack, she replied. I rolled my eyes as everyone disembarked. After untying Philip and letting her stretch her legs, I tied her to a fence post, giving her just enough slack to avoid pulling it out of the ground. Then I made my way into the shack to loot. Sure enough, I found a jar with a bug inside. What really caught my attention were the intricate runes etched into the jar. Even the lid was fused on with runes. Inside, a butterfly floated, its wings slowly beating in the air. Canary came up behind me and gasped. Is that a suspension jar? Those are incredibly rare, she said, her curiosity lighting up. What does it do? I asked. She shrugged. Functionally, nothing. They were made by a weird bug collector. The jars don't break, so when he passed, they were sold as decorations. Some even believe they were made by Sheogorath to drive people mad, since the runes don't match any known alphabet. Still, fascinating stuff. As I pondered that, I received a quest. Gather the jars scattered throughout Skyrim. It even had an option to collect all 24 bug jars. Canary, eyes locked on the jar, confirmed, yep, 24 jars, each with a unique bug inside. This butterfly, though, it's the Ghost Shell Monarch. Looks ordinary unless you shine a light on it. I held it up to the sun, and the butterfly transformed into a ghostly, translucent version of itself. I tucked the jar into my pocket. Fast forward to the chaos that was our dragon encounter. Inside Autumnwatch, we crouched in silence. Canary, clearly skeptical, asked, You really think we can take down a dragon? I gave a nonchalant shrug. We can't kill it, but I'm sure I can make it wish it was never born. She was still unsure. How do we even bring it down? Hajvar, equally unimpressed, added, I didn't sign up for a dragon fight. Vairi, unbothered, tossed a half shrug. You planned this? So I'm waiting to see your brilliant strategy. I smirked, keeping my thoughts about her starting to understand me to myself. Pulling out a bolus with hooks, I said, This is meant for dragon wings. Canary's eyes lit up. A bolus? I passed one to her, then gave a couple to Vairi and Hajvar. Time to see how this would go down. Vec Frostwain stared coolly at the dragon perched on the word wall, seemingly dormant. The air crackled with tension as he gripped the staff of panoply, its power pulsing in his palm. With a flick, thunder roared from the sky, slamming into the beast. Its eyes flared wide with fury. In a blur, arrows flew. Bolus whirled and strikes rained down from his companions. The dragon struggled against the trap, its wings ripping under the assault, yet it remained determined. Fire erupted in an explosive wave, but the battle was far from over. Vec's eyes narrowed, studying the creature's every move. So, Marnid, was it? He mused, a plan already forming in his mind. The dragon's eyes widened with fury as it flicked its hand, and I barely managed to duck before I plunged Sablewave deep into its arm. It winced, opened its mouth as if to speak, but quickly shut it and attacked with its powerful limbs instead. We fought fiercely at the peak of Autumnwatch, a silent battle where I somehow managed to keep it from speaking. The dragon faltered, as if weighed down by something deeper than mere physical wounds. It slammed its fist into the ground in frustration before muttering something unintelligible. The words echoed in my mind, Zubolog, Zubolog. I blinked. The beast was begging, pleading. I paused my attack, realizing its desperation. My companions stared in confusion, but I knew what was happening. He's asking for mercy, I muttered. Canary raised an eyebrow. He said Atmaran, didn't he? Aren't you from there? My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of my understanding. I guess you can understand the language but can't speak it, right? I explained. I felt a pang of guilt. After all, I'd planned to hunt it, harvest its scales and blood. Yet now, all I felt was the weight of what I'd almost done. The dragon was sobbing, and I could hardly believe my eyes. Canary shot me a puzzled look. So, are we going to kill this thing or not? I took a deep breath, weighing the fight in my mind. Marnid, how many times were you killed or enslaved? Marnid raised its head slowly and paused, reflecting. Zuu las krian jalatak tid. Ru zamhus voth fal seshi. Fa anjor las tid. I raised an eyebrow, sharing a silent understanding with Canary. Enslaved by the Seishi? I asked. So, you were killed 5 times during the Merethic era and enslaved in the Second era? Marnid nodded, and I listened as he spoke of his fear of Alduin used as cannon fodder until Alduin resurrected him before his own defeat. Marnid, realizing his newfound freedom, fled south, only to be captured by the Sessi, who humiliated him, using him as a mount. He grew sick dragons, didn't fall ill, but perhaps his spirit had been broken. When they tried to end his life, they used the same tactics I had, lightning and strange bindings to ground him. He escaped but was buried under the mountains of Autumnwatch until Alduin found him a month ago and resurrected him. Alduin, however, made no demands and left him be until we showed up. Marnid whimpered again, head bowed low. The rest of my companions had long lost interest, except for Viari, who silently observed as we spoke. Finally, she asked, so what's going on? I hadn't expected a dragon to carry such trauma, but it made sense. When you're nearly immortal, the scars must run deep. We've made a deal, Marnid muttered, ducking his head. Though I can't exactly explain it. Viari raised an eyebrow. No dragon loot? I shrugged, Marnid begged me to only take his blood, a cowardly dragon, definitely not up to the usual standards. He'd tried to be bold earlier, but ended up revealing his name, something dragons rarely do unless enslaved, because it holds too much power. His desperation was almost pitiful. I wasn't a nice person, but killing Marnid after he begged seemed wrong, especially since it went against everything I thought I knew about dragons. But even if I did kill him, what would it matter? The truth was, Marnid couldn't even speak any other language, so questioning him was pointless. And he was too mistreated by other dragons to be of any help. Even as an ally, he was useless. Cowardice and lack of knowledge made him a poor choice for any plan. And the worst part, he didn't even speak the language of the dragons I sought to learn, the voice, the Thuum. I was hunting dragons to learn their ancient words, but with Marnid, it was just a waste. In a fractured reality, where Skyrim's logic is crumbling, Vec Frostwain half Nord, half Snow Elfry writes quests and shatters timelines with the power of the Frozen Quill. Alongside a band of unlikely allies, Vec battles dark conspiracies, manipulates fate, and crafts new weapons, like Sablewave, a blade that blends shadow and flame. As he navigates corrupted nobles and ancient forces, his path crosses with Stefan, a lost player in this glitching world. But with gods stirring and whispers of forgotten powers, Vec realizes he may not just be rewriting history, he could be writing its end. Through fractured moments and strange alliances, his journey is one of strategy, mystery, and the unraveling of a world no one can control. First, let me return your bow. I follow the path of Kine, and while hunting trolls, I track them to a cave. Inside, I found some dead hunters with this bow, so I assumed they might have taken it from you. Froki stood, moved over to inspect the bow, and nodded. Yeah, this is mine. His eyes met mine. You followed Kine? I nodded. Yes, though I strayed once. I held up Hersine's ring. It's cursed now, bound to me. I cleared my throat, weaving a lie. I was on Kine's trials when I found your bow. Froki raised an eyebrow. So, you were completing her trials? Yes, I replied. The guardian troll spirit lived at Grey Winter Watch. That's where I found your bow. Froki nodded, intrigued. Who performed the sacred ceremony to start your trials? I showed him the hearth. I'm from Emora, far from here. My uncle, who still resides there, performed the ceremony. Kine's will led me to Skyrim. I thought this place was forsaken by the gods, but it's good to see that people still worship the Mother Pantheon. Froki smiled, his expression warm. At Mora? I never imagined it. I'm glad to hear some still honor the old gods. Too many worship imposters and have lost their way. It was so easy to weave the truth and lies together. And Mora, abandoned by the gods, included the Daedric princes, and Froki believed it all without a second thought. I took a calculated risk and gave a subtle nod. I should be on my way. Just wanted to return your bow. A hunter's weapon reflects their soul. Yours was clearly cherished, even in its worn state. May the stars light your path. As I turned to leave, Froki stopped me. Hold on. If you've completed the sacred trials, take this. He offered me a bone and stone amulet. I knew it was Kyne's token. I fought back my excitement. But I can't. That's Kyne's token, right? Froki nodded. Yes. I crafted it when I passed the sacred trials. My grandson, Haming, is too young for it, and I don't want him bound by my old beliefs. Just because I despise Skyrim's new faith doesn't mean I'll prevent him from following it. That's how I lost my son. He shook his head. Take it. You might find a use for it. I would have offered you my bow too, but I see you already have one. The bow I carried was actually Canary's, though I had persuaded her to lend it to me. I accepted Kyne's token, inspecting the amulet to confirm its enchantment didn't require the trials. Holding it close, I said, "Thank you. I'll wear it with honor." Froki nodded as I paused before the door, offering a final piece of advice. Maybe you should give your old bow to Haming. The young boy might be too inexperienced for the sacred trials, but self-defense and practice are always good for both the body and mind. Froki grinned at me, casting a glance at Haming, who kicked his legs against the chair. Thanks, I'll do that, Froki replied. As I closed the shack behind me, my grin turned mischievous, but I froze upon receiving a notification. I opened my passive effects tab and noticed a new red-named effect, Kyne's Imposter. It was a debuff that lowered my bow accuracy by 20%. That was rough, but I couldn't complain too much, especially after scamming an old man for an amulet. When I examined the amulet, the enchantment was intact, so I equipped it, which granted Kyne's blessing. This reduced damage taken from creatures by 10% and boosted my archery by 5%. The damage reduction applied to creatures like Daedra and any non-humanoid, which was vital. However, the archery boost made me think, could enchantments improve accuracy as well as damage? I hoped I could offset my poor aim with enchantments. Thankfully, the debuff only affected bows, not crossbows. I was planning to switch to a crossbow anyway, as it offered better customization with scopes and accessories. As the smell of cooking food wafted my way, I slid down the path, eager to grab a bite. So here's the deal, I said. When we roll up to the orc tribe, we're probably going to have to take down some giants. The whole carriage stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Even Alfra, who couldn't see a thing, was looking at me like I was crazy. I sighed, all right, fine, let me explain. The orc tribe got cursed by their god, Malakath. And now they're at war with a tribe of giants. They're fighting over a shrine, one that's sacred to them, and a few other tribes. I don't know much about it, and frankly, I don't care. Canary shot me a look. So why are you telling me this? Are you helping them? Before I could answer, Ulfr jumped in. He's after becoming bloodkin, plus he's got a mine he wants to offload to the orcs. It'll be cheaper than anywhere else. I nodded. The Imperial Legion taxes the hell out of it, since smiths mostly need to work on Legion armor. I could handle it myself, but I can't do it all the time, and it's off the books, so the money's a little freer for other uses. Vyre raised an eyebrow. How's that freer? Canary rolled her eyes. It means bribes. If it's off the record, the money can be used to bribe officials. Honestly, it's a clever plan, especially if it's a gold mine you're talking about. I nodded again and pointed at Hajvar and Ulfr. That's why I need extra hands. Vyre slowed the carriage. Is that the orc fort? Canary pulled out her bow as I gripped my staff. We saw 3 giants standing by the fort gates. Only 2 orcs were attacking them from a distance. The rest were holding the gates up. Canary loosed 3 arrows into the back of one giant's head, and I launched an ice spike into another. The one I hit fell forward, impaled on the fort wall, while the other one turned around. That's when Vyre slammed her hammer into its leg, making it stumble. I drew Sable Wave, ready to jump into action. In mere moments, the second giant was down, and the third one, realizing it was surrounded, tried to flee. But one of the orcs, agile as ever, scaled the wall and leaped onto its back, sinking his teeth into the giant's neck, causing blood to spurt like a fountain. I recognized the orc as the one who had taken over as chieftain after the fall of Yamars. I waved to the orc mage. Having trouble? Atub, the orc mage, let out a heavy sigh. We thank you, travelers. You couldn't have come at a better time. Canary, ever curious, asked about the giants as Vyre and I began looting the fallen titans. Why are you under siege by giants? They rarely attack people, especially isolated clans like yours. A man clad in full orcish armor shouted at her, None of your business! Leave, outsiders! I brushed off the nonsense. Someone must have hunted their mammoths. Giants care for them like children, and angering them? That's asking for trouble. If they can't exact revenge on you, they get petty. Atub seemed torn but spoke up. I'll handle this, chieftain. These travelers at least deserve hospitality. Yamar scoffed but walked off, leaving Atub to lead us to the camp. The orcs barely acknowledged our presence, nursing fresh scars or keeping their eyes down. When we reached a small altar, Atub turned to us with urgency. Please, help us break this curse. We won't survive much longer. Canary's voice echoed in the air, but she only shook her head. This is your mess, Vec. I'm just going to relax on the carriage. I nodded, watching her leave with Viry as we approached Atub. Alone now, I didn't waste time. How did your tribe get cursed? I asked. Atub wasted no time either, immediately blaming Yamar's. It's all his fault. He hunted mammoths and offered them to Malakath at his shrine. The giants attacked, took over the shrine, and killed anyone who tried to enter. After a while, Malakath cursed us for letting it happen. Something didn't add up, so I pressed further. Then why don't you do something about it? Atub closed her eyes, the weight of the truth heavy in her silence. Yamar's is still the strongest. As long as the tribe follows the code of Moloch, we can't act against him. I sighed, frustrated. So, you have a plan? She didn't answer right away, so I cut in. You want to contact Malakath, get him to push Yamar's into action, right? Atub's nod was slow but certain. I have everything for the ritual, except 2 item stroll fat and a Daedra heart. Viry and I exchanged a glance. I had exactly what she needed. Here, I said, handing it over. Hopefully Malakath won't mind me lending a hand. Atub's gaze lingered on me, a mix of surprise and something else, but no suspicion. She seemed relieved. She swiftly took the 2 ingredients from my hands and placed them on the altar. Almost instantly, the armored scarecrow pulsed with energy. Invisible eyes observed us, and the altar of ingredients was consumed by fire. A disembodied voice echoed through the air. So, you seek something from me too. Vec Frostwain, your greed might be your greatest flaw, though your skill with metalwork is something I respect. Whether through luck or talent, I want to see you forge a new artifact. I believe you understand what I'm asking. Atub looked stunned that Malakath addressed me instead of her, the one who performed the ritual. But then his gaze turned to Atub. You wise woman, go find Yamar's or I'll strike you down. Atub immediately dashed toward the longhouse. In the meantime, Malakath spoke again. I warn you, use the weapon forged from Volendrung, and I will send my fiercest followers to destroy you. Viry smiled. He can give it to me. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She shrugged. Not like you're gonna use it. Malakath fell silent, seemed like he was done speaking. I supposed it made sense. He wasn't exactly the talkative type. However, when Yamar's and Atub approached the altar, Malakath's fury shook the earth. Yamar's Largashper! You let Giants invade my shrine, and now this? His roar rattled me and I took a step back. You failed to protect your land, your home. You might as well betray your promises as chieftain. If you don't hunt down the giants who started this, I'll make you regret ever being born in Ornum. This rat would kill you in an instant if I offer him an artifact. I nodded without hesitation, ready to face the entire clan. Yamar's fist clenched in fury as Malakath's words echoed through the air. Vec will make sure you finish this job. If you fail, I'll strip your flesh. Now go. The eerie glow surrounding the scarecrow faded as Yamar's, in a rage, hurled the scarecrow into a pile of logs. Pointing at me, he barked, You! Since Malakath thinks you're one of us, you'll help me recover the shrine. I rolled my eyes. Expected? Especially when he threatened to take your flesh. Shaking his fist, Yamar stormed off, muttering about preparing for the task ahead. Atub stared at me, fear creeping into her voice. How? Why would Malakath speak to you like that? He even praised your blacksmithing. I simply raised Sable Wave and replied, Guess it comes from forging a gnarly sword with 2 Daedric artifacts. Atub, seemingly shaken, looked down at her hands. Turning to Viry, I patted her shoulder and she whispered, What's Volendrung? I explained, A Dwemer artifact in Malakath's hands. He probably admired its craftsmanship, though I was surprised he asked me to reforge it. Viry mused. Maybe he thought you'd reforge it anyway? Truthfully, I had considered it. But Volendrung wasn't just made of Dwemer metal, it had its own complexities. I shrugged. Who knows, Volendrung wasn't really my goal, I just wanted the title of Bloodkin. Though, reforging another artifact could be fun. I'll need to find a forge powerful enough, though. Viry nodded. I'll wait, but you better gift me whatever you create. I jumped into the carriage where Canary was reading. She glanced up. So? The quest set. Next stop, Darklight Tower, home to a witch coven. Ready to go, I was stopped by Viry. Don't we need to hit that shrine? Canary raised an eyebrow. I responded. Fallowstone Cave, it's past Riften. Yamar's can wait. Hajvar looked lost. Who's Yamar's? Vyri shrugged and I explained, the orc chief who cursed his tribe, it's a whole thing. Canary put down her book. Is this next stop going to be one of those whole things? I don't mind helping people, but I don't like helping people, I chuckled. So, you mind the stops? She nodded. Yes, I just want to get to Riften. Sure, it's a corrupt city, but a bed's a bed. I raised my hands. We'll talk on the road, Philip. Giddy up. Philip started pulling the carriage as if nothing was wrong. Chapter 79, Witch Coven Drama. The journey to Darklight Tower turned into a long discussion on exhaustion, and Canary had had enough of dungeon crawling. She asked if she could take the carriage and head to Riften ahead of me and Vyri. I couldn't blame her after seeing my detours. She decided to take the lead. Havjar and Ulfr joined her, less eager to follow me after the dragon incident. From where we were, they would reach in a day. Me and Vyri, maybe 2 to 3 if things went badly. Vyri looked back as the carriage disappeared. So, what's our next target? She asked. I shrugged as I climbed the steps of Darklight Tower. More witches, mostly. Inside, the scene wasn't a surprise. A dead witch lay on the floor, and another woman huddled by a locked door, someone pounding from the other side. Ilya's eyes widened when she saw us. Thursday, this isn't what it looks like, she stammered. This is a coven, and I can't handle it anymore. The sacrifices, the kidnappings, the bloody rituals. I smiled. Good news. We can help. For a price. She shook her head. I don't have any money, but take whatever you want from the tower. I nodded. We'll do that, but I'm more interested in a recruitment offer. Having mages around can be useful in business. Vyri rolled her eyes, and Ilya nodded. I can work with that. The air was thick with tension as the door behind Ilya rattled with relentless banging. With a quick glance, I extended my hand to help her up, but before she could move, the door flew open. A young woman stumbled inside, and in a swift motion, I plunged Sablewave into her chest. Ilya winced, but without missing a beat, declared, I'll lead the way. Vyri, with a sharp whisper, added, She'd better. I was curious about the undercurrent in Vyri's voice, but I followed Ilya up the stairs of Darklight Tower. A moment later, Ilya halted, warning us of spiders ahead. But Vyri, with her usual disregard, charged forward. The spiders reacted immediately, lunging at her, but she smashed one to the ground with her mace while I sliced through the other. A quick glance between us said it all. I knew you had my back, Vyri shrugged. Ilya, her expression a mix of disbelief and frustration, led us onward, unbothered. As we reached the supply closet, Ilya hesitated with the key in hand. But before she could act, Vyri punched straight through the decaying wood. Ilya frowned, key still in her grasp, but I seized it, slipping it into my pocket with a grin. Don't worry about her. She's mostly harmless. Probably just a bit jealous. Vyri shot me a look, muttering, Sometimes I just want to punch you. I reached to pat her messy hair, and she smacked my hand away. Ilya watched us, clearly questioning our sanity, but I only smiled, letting magic course through my hand as the room's contents vanished into my inventory. Her eyes widened in surprise, but before she could speak, I interrupted. Your mother's trying to become a Hagraven? Ilya nodded, baffled. How did you know? Ilya nervously tugged at her robe. Well, I don't know how to answer all that. I tried to avoid all the rituals. I pointed behind us. Was that Hagraven your grandmother? Her eyes went wide, completely caught off guard by the question. But I was right. She was the first matriarch until my mother took over. I was supposed to follow, but I don't want any part in leading a coven I never cared for. She stopped at a door and turned to me and Vyri. This door leads to the ritual site. We could trick my mother into thinking you're the sacrifice and surprise her. I placed a hand on Vyri's shoulder. Act like you're under a spell. Vyri scowled and sighed. I nudged her. Stand up straight. Relax your arms. She complied, and together they stepped outside. I waited behind the door, listening to Ilya lie to her mother. Her mother seemed thrilled that Ilya had stopped her tantrum, even calling Vyri a beautiful subject for the ritual. Ilya shuddered at the words. I slipped out, listening as Ilya's mother praised her choice. Ilya, my darling, you've truly outdone yourself. A womanly lycanthrope like this will be perfect for quickening my transformation. I might even gain some of its power. I gripped Sablewave tightly. Vyri sat down as instructed. Ilya's mother reached toward a staff on the table. Ilya nervously adjusted her robe, her fingers rubbing the fabric as she stumbled over her words. Well, I'm not sure how to answer all that. I tried to avoid the rituals. I raised an eyebrow and pointed behind us, asking, Was that Hagraven your grandmother? Ilya froze, clearly not expecting that question, but to my surprise, I was right. She was the first matriarch until my mother took over. I was supposed to lead when she completed her transformation, but I never wanted to be part of a coven I hated. She paused by a door, glancing back at me and Vyri. This leads to the ritual site. If you want, We can trick my mother into thinking you're the sacrifice, and we can ambush her. I placed a hand on Vairi's shoulder, whispering, "You heard her. Act like you're under a trance." Vairi gave me a resigned frown and a sigh. "Stand tall, loosen your arms," I urged. She complied, and the two women stepped outside. I waited behind the door, straining to hear Ilya's voice as she spoke to her mother, telling lies to keep our plan hidden. Her mother, almost delighted, called Vairi a perfect candidate for the ritual, though Ilya visibly shuddered at her words. I slipped outside, listening in as Ilya's mother spoke. "Ilya, darling, you've really outdone yourself. This lycanthrope will be perfect for my transformation, maybe even for stealing some of its power." I tightened my grip on Sablewave, while Vairi, following Ilya's mother, sat in a chair. Ilya's mother reached toward a staff on the table, her eyes gleaming with malicious intent. In a shattered world where time bends and reality crumbles, Vec Frostwain, a master of rewriting fate, faces the unraveling fabric of existence. With his companions Vairi, a rogue werewolf, and a mystical warhorse named Philip Vec, navigates a chaotic, glitching realm where gods stir and forgotten conspiracies fester. Armed with Sablewave, a sentient blade forged from legendary relics, Vec tears through enemies, manipulating time and space to reshape destiny. As dark powers like Sanguine and Mephala toy with the broken system, Vec's quest is no longer about just surviving, but about deciding whether he can truly control the final chapter of this fractured world. Through fiery battles, hidden forges, and mysterious figures, Vec and his allies rewrite their fates in a world that constantly rewrites itself. But as they confront ancient dragons, corrupted nobles, and their own haunted pasts, the question remains, can Vec trust even his own power, or will the world consume them all in its unraveling chaos? The stench of Riften hit me as soon as we arrived, like a mix of unwashed bodies and smoke, making my eyes water. I found Philip near the stables, the carriage parked off to the side, and Shatter was brushing down a horse. I considered helping him out, though his debt with a local led to a certain favor being owed. Before I could act, Vairi's voice snapped me back to reality. "This is a shakedown! The guards are just as corrupt as they say," she spat, clearly irritated. The poor guard who tried to extort us for entry was pinned against a wall, caught in a moment of weakness. I placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her down. "Relax. Corruption is the city's second nature. Could you get those gates open for us? I have business with the Blackbriars." I couldn't help but smile at how quickly Riften's charm got under her skin. There were questions to ask here, things to sort out, and it was best to stay focused as the city's mysteries unfolded around us. The guard's eyes widened in panic as he rushed to unlock the tiny door, urging us to be cautious with our coin purses. Vairi clicked her tongue and moved ahead, while Ilya, amused, whispered how she would have fallen for the fee trick had she come alone. I raised an eyebrow and asked where she'd gotten supplies from, given her limited interactions outside the tower. Ilya shrugged, explaining a nearby coven at Orphan's Rock would trade goods with Helgen, who then exchanged them with her for common ingredients that raised suspicion in bulk. We reached the Bee and Barb, and after a quick exchange with Vairi, I headed toward Canary, who was talking to a priest. It wasn't Miramal, but Dinya Baluthamara Questgiver, with a quest that had a tempting reward, but a real headache. As I took a seat, Ilya hesitated, clearly feeling out of place. Canary introduced me, revealing that Ilya, a reformed witch, had been part of a tragic past where we had to kill her mother, the leader of her coven. Now, she was set to assist me in future dealing. Dinya nodded. "We visit every 3 months to use healing spells on the bees to ensure the hives stay healthy. I guessed it was to keep parasites at bay. Bees seem to get plenty of those." I quickly got back to the topic. "Do you know if there was a problem with the leadership of the guild?" Canary eyed me. "Do you know the leader of the Thieves Guild?" I shrugged. I know his entire life story. He did a good job hiding it, but when you're as deep in the game as I am, you can tell when someone makes a deal with a Daedric prince. Dinya's eyes widened. "The current leader has a deal with a Daedric prince?" "I've heard rumors." I shook my head. "The whole Thieves Guild is tied to Nocturnalists, a whole thing. But their leader betrayed her, so I have his story pretty figured out." Ilya chimed in. "Does that mean you know who they are?" I nodded. "Yes, but for reasons I can't explain. I needed to learn more about the Thieves Guild before anything was exposed. Plus, there was money to be made from that information." "Thanks for answering my questions, Dinya Balu," I said, bowing and stepping back. Canary wasn't sharing anything, but I could guess why Talos was banned, and that was a big clue. I tapped Ilya's shoulder. "Why don't you grab a drink and relax?" I handed her a coin, and she nodded. As I made my way toward Vairi, I crossed the bar and gave Kirava a smile. "Has my companion here secured us rooms?" Kirava grinned while Vairi answered, "Yeah, only 2 left, 1 on the bottom floor. 1 at the top. The witch can have the bottom." Vairi took a sip of her drink, turning her gaze away. Kirava asked the usual question. Dinya nodded. We visit every 3 months to cast healing spells on the bees to keep the hives healthy. It was probably to fend off parasites, I thought, knowing how prone bees were to them. I snapped back into focus. Do you know if there's been any trouble with the guild leadership? Canary glanced at me. You know the leader of the Thieves Guild? I shrugged. I know his whole life story. He did a good job hiding it, but when you're as deep as I am, you notice when someone's made a deal with a Daedric prince. Dinya's eyes widened. The current leader has a deal with a Daedric prince? I've heard rumors. I shook my head. The entire guild is tied to Nocturnal. It's a whole thing. But the leader? He betrayed Nocturnal, so I know everything about him. Ilya finally spoke. Does that mean you know who they are? I nodded. Yes, but for reasons I can't say. I needed to dig deeper into the guild's business and make sure I could profit from it before the truth came out. Thanks for answering my questions, Dinya Balu, I said, bowing slightly and stepping away. Canary wasn't opening up, and I had a feeling it was connected to the Talos ban. I tapped Ilya's shoulder. Why don't you grab a drink and relax? I passed her a coin and she nodded. I walked over to Vairi and crossing the bar gave Kirava a smile. Has my companion arranged rooms for us? Kirava grinned as Vairi answered. Yeah, there were only 2 left. One on the bottom floor, one on the top. The witch can have the bottom floor. Vairi took a sip of her drink, her gaze sliding away from me. Kirava asked the usual question. So, with a room rented, anything else I can do for you? I nodded. What's the word on the street? I know the Thieves Guild is down in the Ratways. Any new faces? They owe a debt. Kirava fell silent, her eyes scanning the room. He came in here about 7 months ago, made us pay protection fees. I just handed over the gold after he nearly killed Helga and wrecked half of Bercy's stock. He was seen leaving for Whiterun earlier this week. Ah, that explains where he went. Has he been spotted anywhere else, I asked? Kirava nodded. Windhelm. Rumor has it, he stole half the city's gold. I paused, thinking. Did any detective or mercenary come through from Windhelm before that? She started to shake her head, but Talonjay interrupted. Yes, but he didn't stay long. I saw him leave the Honor Hall orphanage after the incident. They were Argonians, like us. A shadow scale. A shadow scale? That was unexpected. It separated the 2 quest zones going from Windhelm to Riften, the other the reverse. They almost crossed paths. I nodded. Thanks for the info. Anything else you need? Talonjay hesitated. Some flawless amethysts would be nice. Kirava glanced up, puzzled. Amethysts? Why do you need those? I grinned. They're for a personal project. As I rummaged through my bag, I found a flawless amethyst. I can spare one, but that's all I have. He nodded. One is enough. I'll buy the rest from Medesi. I have work to get back to. Turning to Kirva, I asked, anyone seen a manic Argonian down at the docks? She replied, from deepest fathoms. She's been mumbling since returning from some ruins. Thanks, Vairi. Don't overdo it with the drinks. She clicked her tongue and took another swig. As I climbed the stairs, Kirava called out, Room 3, marked with a sign. I nodded, passing by Sapphire, dressed in plain clothes with a dagger in hand, trailing behind. Before she could strike, I spun around, grabbing her by the throat. Her eyes widened as I dragged her toward the room. She must have overheard my questions about the Thieves Guild. Maven Blackbriar shot me a sidelong glance as I entered the room. This would complicate things later. With the door shut, I pushed Sapphire toward the bed, but she immediately drew a second knife. I unsheathed Sable Wave with a smile. Think my blade's a bit more intimidating. How about you put that dagger down? After a tense pause, she lowered her weapon. Why were you asking about the Thieves Guild? Kirava raised an eyebrow. Amethysts? What do you need those for? I shot her a grin. Just something for a project. Digging into my bag, I found one perfect amethyst. I can spare this, but no more. He nodded. One's enough. I'll get the rest from Medesi. Anyway, time to get back to work. Turning back to Kirava, I asked, has anyone seen a manic Argonian at the docks? She nodded. From deepest fathoms. She's an explorer. Been mumbling since returning from some ruins. I thanked her and reminded, don't drink too much. As she chugged her third ale, I headed up the stairs. Kirava's voice called out, third room marked with a sign. I waved as I passed Sapphire, who, dressed in simple clothes, had a dagger in hand and followed me up. Before she could make a move, I spun around and seized her by the throat. Her eyes widened in shock as she gasped for air. I dragged her to the room, hadn't planned on this, but it seems she overheard my questions about the Thieves Guild. Maven Blackbriar shot me a glance, her dinner plate gleaming, which meant dealing with her later would be more complicated. I shut the door behind us and held Sapphire tight. She tried to draw a second knife, but I pulled out Sablewave, flashing a grin. My weapon's a little more intimidating. Drop that dagger. She hesitated but complied. Why were you asking about the Thieves Guild? In a fractured world where reality itself is unraveling, Vec Frostwain, a half-Nord, half-snow elf with the power to manipulate fate, continues his quest to rewrite the very fabric of existence. Armed with a frozen quill, Vec merges ancient relics, dismantles conspiracies, and reshapes timeline. With companions like Canary, Vairi, and a warhorse named Philip, he battles corrupted nobles, rescues allies, and faces powerful forces such as Mafala, Meridia's disappearance, and Sanguine's twisted games. Now, more than ever, Vec is not just bending the system, he's on the brink of writing its final chapter, armed with the living weapon, Sablewave, and the knowledge of a broken world that may soon collapse. But amidst it all, the whispers of forgotten powers grow louder, and Vec may soon have to choose between salvation and destruction as he faces his ultimate test.